We've all seen crime movies, and honestly speaking, all the worst criminals are the ones who leave behind even just a shred of their existence. Some criminals forget to take their gloves along with them, while others are foolish enough to even leave behind the weapon used for homicide in some stupid hiding place. Well, if you've ever been in a position where you're sitting at home and screaming at these dumb villains to be smarter, it looks like your prayers were answered. We know this because recently there was a case in Mexico where one very smart criminal ended up cleaning away every shred of his actions. And when we say every shred, we actually mean it. The man, or woman, hey, we're not sexist anyways when it comes to murders. Whoever it was, they were so dedicated to not getting caught that they even power washed the streets to be safe. Today we're going to be talking about just that, so without any further ado, let's dive straight into it. And be careful, you are in for an adventurous ride. In Mexico, a new chapter had just begun when it seemed to be unthinkable to conceive of any more savage of a method to terminate another human being's life. This time, a home camera shows two white vehicles en route to a burial service on Sunday in the hamlet of San Jose de Gracia, Michoacan. A dozen individuals are lined up against a house's wall as though facing a firing squad. And such it is. Several armed men take up positions opposite the home and fire what seem to be assault rifles. The video, captured from a neighboring residence, fades away and then returns to the crime scene. A few victims may be seen falling through the gunfire's cloud of smoke. Nobody remains standing. Everyone has collapsed to the ground. Some local media has claimed that it was as many as 17 victims. Prosecutors said recently that they could not determine the number of fatalities since the assailants cleaned up the crime scene, washed the pavement, and removed any remains. At the crime scene, the investigators discovered a bag containing brains and shot casings. The assault happened outside of the burial of the mother of an accused officer of the Jalisco cartel. The officer went to his mother's burial with his bodyguards, but bumped across a Jalisco cartel commander with whom he had a personal dispute. Apparently, the first guy was assaulted and taken out. It seems that his body and any other remains from the conflict were transported away in pickup trucks. Could you imagine just how horrific that must be for loved ones to be involved? However, the most intriguing aspect was how much time the perpetrators had to clean up the crime scene before the police could approach them. As mentioned before, this assault happened outside of a burial ceremony for the mother of a purported hitman for the Jalisco New Generation gang. In Michoacan, Jalisco's been engaged in protracted, brutal turf wars with the rival Viagras gang, commonly known as the United Cartels. The top prosecutor of the state of Michoacan said that members of the rival gang attended the burial in search of the assassin, known by only his first name, Alejandro, to officials. State prosecutor Adrian Lopez Sol said that the assassin presumably passed away on the site, and that any further deceased were loaded in the pickup trucks and removed by the assailants. Other social media footage saw 2 or 3 bodies being thrown into a pickup vehicle. The incident happened just a few weeks from the town hall, where 3 local police officers were on duty, according to Lopez Sols. He said that the police didn't go to the site or raise an alert because they lacked the necessary force to interfere. Lopez Sols said that the state and federal officials learned about the incident via social media postings, not a local police notice. Cartel gunmen often outgun and outnumber local police in Mexico. There's been a spate of recent assaults at funerals in Mexico where cartel gunmen aim to take out rival gang members in attendance. Jorge Luis Anguiano, member of the municipality that comprises the San Jose de Garcia, said that before the assault happened, a big convoy of cars was seen approaching from the adjacent state of Jalisco, which is home to the same named cartel. He said that local police lacked the weaponry to interfere. Given the quantity of believed offenders present and the rules of engagement, we were forced to retire. We lack the weaponry to address events of this kind. In such circumstances, local administrations are left vulnerable, he warned. Jeez. Now if that's not scary and creepy, we don't know what is. Authorities have committed to increasing patrols in the region, which borders the Mexican state of Jalisco. Michoacan and Jalisco are 2 of the most violent states in Mexico due to turf disputes between strong competing drug gangs. Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, the president of Mexico, said in an inquiry that's ongoing, he hoped with all my spirit that these individuals were still alive. The information we received from Michoacan prosecutors said that no deaths were discovered. There were incidents of confrontation, there were gunshot casings, and I believe there were some revenants, but no bodies. Let's just hope it's not true, he said during his press conference. We don't know if this gives any consolation to the people whose loved ones were mercilessly taken out in broad daylight, but we hope that it does. The crime control department in the area need to work a little harder to try and figure out how someone could have taken out around 17 or more people in broad daylight and cleaned up the scene so thoroughly. Can you imagine the blood and the remains of 17 people all in one place? So, whoever it was, they had the time and the authority in the region to take out 17 or more people, clean it all up at a leisurely pace, and then leave the scene of the crime, all without leaving a hint of evidence or even an eyewitness. We find all of this real hard to believe. The crime site is a small hamlet street bordered by trees and low-rise dwellings. It occurred in broad daylight. It seems that even funeral wakes can't be tranquil when organized gangs are settling scores. In Mexico, there seems to be no end to the violent cycle in which fatalities perpetuate themselves. On a daily basis, around 100 fatalities are recorded, giving the country a war-torn appearance. This most recent homicide is the clearest illustration yet of this view, since it resembled a military execution more than a gang brawl. Carteles Unidos, Jalisco Nueva Generación, Caballeros Templarios, and several more criminal gangs have been terrorizing the citizens of Michoacan for decades, essentially. This region's excellent soil produces a lot of the crops, especially the famous avocado, which is shipped entirely to the United States. There is no enterprise in this area that doesn't wind up in the hands of criminal organizations. Recent threats to U.S. inspectors resulted in the suspension of avocado imports and multi-million-dollar losses. Michoacan is also a state comprised of armed people who are attempting to combat the narcotics threat in their own manner, but ultimately resulting in additional homicides. There has been an insurmountable number of such incidents involving graphic assaults and homicides seen in neighboring states such as Zacatecas. This is another chapter in the journey to perdition. The Mexican military seems incapable of resolving this conflict. There is still a major lack of information on the specifics of the homicides. For the time being, one can only continue to count the deceased. All in all, it poses a terrifying scene for the people living in Mexico. If the police couldn't come at the time of the massacre and then no one managed to intervene when the cleanup was going on, what does that say about Mexico's law enforcement? And what does that say about the safety of the people who are living in the area? The question then arises, is there anyone looking out for them? Or are they left to fend for themselves in the middle of different gang rivalries?